Mail-order bride arrived to find 6 girls and a locked door, but she became the key they were waiting for. The stagecoach lurched to a stop, sending dust swirling through the October air. Eleanor Hartwell clutched her worn carpet bag tighter, her heart hammering against her ribs as she peered through the small window at the desolate landscape of Montana Territory. Rolling hills stretched endlessly under an enormous sky, and in the distance she could make out a modest log cabin with smoke curling from its chimney. "End of the line, miss," the driver called down. "McDonald Ranch." Eleanor smoothed her dark green traveling dress and checked that her auburn hair was still neatly pinned beneath her simple bonnet. After 3 days of bone-jarring travel from St. Louis, she felt anything but presentable for meeting her intended husband. The letters from Thomas McDonald had painted a picture of a successful rancher in need of a wife to help manage his household. What he hadn't mentioned was that she'd be arriving at what appeared to be the edge of the world. She accepted the driver's weathered hand and stepped down onto the packed earth, her boots crunching on fallen leaves. The October air bit through her wool cloak, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of winter. The driver handed down her trunk with a grunt and tipped his hat. "Good luck to you, miss. Next stage won't be through for 2 weeks." The finality of those words settled over Eleanor like a shroud as the stagecoach disappeared into the distance, leaving her alone with her belongings and her rapidly beating heart. She turned toward the cabin, noting the well-maintained fence and the sturdy construction. At least Thomas McDonald appeared to be a man of his word regarding his circumstances. As she approached the front door, she could hear voices inside, high, young voices that made her pause. Children? Thomas had never mentioned children in his letters. Eleanor raised her hand to knock, but before her knuckles could connect with the wood, the door swung open. 6 pairs of eyes stared up at her from faces ranging in age from perhaps 4 to 14. 6 girls, all with variations of the same wheat-colored hair and clear blue eyes, stood crowded in the doorway like flowers in a window box. Their dresses were clean but well mended, and their faces held a mixture of hope and weariness that tugged at Eleanor's heart. "Are you?" the oldest girl asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you the lady who's come to help us?" Eleanor blinked, confusion clouding her thoughts. "I'm Eleanor Hartwell. I'm here to see Thomas McDonald. I believe there's been some mistake." The girls exchanged glances, and the second oldest, perhaps 12 years old, stepped forward. "There's no mistake, miss. We've been waiting for you," Papa said. "Papa said you'd come and everything would be better. Your papa." Eleanor's voice caught. "Is Thomas McDonald your father?" "Yes, miss," the oldest girl said. "I'm Sarah, and this is Mary, Anna, Beth, Lucy, and little Catherine." She pointed to each sister in turn. Papa's been gone 3 weeks now." The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. "Gone?" She sank onto her trunk, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "Gone where?" "He went to town for supplies and never came back," Sarah explained, her young face trying to maintain composure. "Mr. Jenkins from the neighboring ranch found Papa's horse wandering loose. They searched." She shrugged helplessly. "Sheriff said Papa must have had an accident, maybe fell in the river during the crossing." Eleanor stared at the 6 pairs of eyes watching her with desperate hope, and her heart shattered. She had traveled hundreds of miles to marry a man she'd never met, only to find herself the sole adult responsible for 6 orphaned children on an isolated ranch with winter approaching. "What have you girls been doing for food?" she asked, her practical nature asserting itself despite the shock. "We've been managing," Mary said proudly. "Sarah can cook some, and we have chickens and a cow. But miss..." She hesitated, then continued in a rush. "There's something else. Something important." Sarah shot her sister a warning look, but Mary pressed on. "Papa said, if anything ever happened to him, we should tell the lady about the room." "What room?" Eleanor asked, though something in the girl's expressions made her stomach tighten with apprehension. Little Catherine, who couldn't have been more than 4, piped up before her sisters could stop her. "The locked room," Papa said, It was only for emergencies, and the lady would know what to do. Catherine, Sarah scolded, but the damage was done. Eleanor looked from one face to another, seeing secrets and fear lurking behind their young eyes. Show me. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Come inside first. It's getting cold, and you must be tired from your journey. The interior of the cabin was larger than it had appeared from outside, with a main room that served as kitchen and sitting area, and what appeared to be 3 smaller rooms branching off. Everything was clean but showed the signs of children trying to maintain a household without adult guide. Dishes were stacked somewhat haphazardly on the table, and mending sat in a basket by the fire. We've been sleeping together in Papa's room, Sarah explained, noticing Eleanor's assessing gaze. The other rooms, well, one is ours and one. She gestured helplessly toward a closed door on the far side of the room. Eleanor approached the door and tried the handle. Locked, as the girls had said. The wood was heavy oak, and the lock looked substantial. Do you know where the key is? Papa always wore it on a chain around his neck, Anna said softly. He said it was the most important thing he owned, next to us. Eleanor studied the door, running her fingers along the frame. There were scratches in the wood around the lock, as if someone had tried to force it open. Did your father ever tell you what was in here? No, miss, Sarah said, but sometimes late at night we'd hear him in there, moving things around, like he was working on something important. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine that had nothing to do with the Montana cold. She turned back to the girls, who were watching her with the desperate faith of children who had run out of options. How long has the food been lasting? She asked. We're down to dried beans and a little cornmeal, Mary admitted, and some preserves Mama put up before. She trailed off, unwilling to voice what had clearly been another loss. Eleanor made a decision. She had come here to build a life, and while that life looked nothing like what she had imagined, these children needed her. Winter was coming, and 6 girls alone on an isolated ranch wouldn't survive without help. All right, she said, removing her cloak and hanging it on a peg by the door. First things first. Sarah, show me what food we have. Mary, I'll need to see the animals and assess what we're working with. The rest of you, start gathering kindling for the fire. We're going to figure this out together. Over the next few days, Eleanor threw herself into understanding the ranch and the girls' situation. The cattle had been moved to winter pasture closer to the house, but they would need hay that hadn't been cut. The chickens were laying well, and the cow provided milk, but their stores of preserved food were dangerously low for 6 growing children and an adult to survive until spring. Each night, Eleanor found herself staring at the locked door, wondering what Thomas McDonnell had hidden away. The girls seemed to believe it held some solution to their problems, but what could be so important that a man would lock it away from his own children? On her 4th night at the ranch, a terrible storm blew in from the north. Snow mixed with sleet pounded against the windows, and the wind howled around the cabin like a living thing. Eleanor sat by the fire, mending one of little Catherine's dresses, while the girls played quietly nearby. It was then that she heard it, a sound coming from behind the locked door. Not the creaking of wood in the wind, but a rhythmic tapping like someone knocking from the inside. Eleanor's blood froze. She looked at the girls, but they seemed not to have heard anything over the storm. The tapping came again, 3 short raps followed by 2 long ones, then repeated. Sarah, Eleanor said carefully, have you ever heard strange sounds coming from that room? The oldest girl looked up from the book she was reading to the younger ones. Sometimes, she admitted. Papa said it was just the wind, but she bit her lip. It always sounded like someone was trying to get out. That night, after the girls were asleep, Eleanor sat vigil by the locked door. The tapping came again around midnight, the same pattern, 3 short, 2 long, repeated 3 times, then silence. She pressed her ear to the wood, and could swear she heard something else, a faint scratching like someone writing. The next morning brought clear skies and bitter cold. Eleanor was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she noticed something odd about the cabin structure. From the outside, the locked room appeared larger than it should be based on the interior layout. There was definitely more space than what she could account for. She walked around the entire cabin, measuring her steps and comparing the exterior dimensions to her mental map of the interior. Her suspicions were confirmed. The locked room was at least 6 feet longer than it appeared from inside. That afternoon, while the girls were busy with lessons, Eleanor began a more systematic search of the cabin. She was looking through Thomas MacDonald's papers when she found a letter in his own handwriting, addressed to the lady who comes after. Her hands trembling, Eleanor unfolded the worn paper and read, "If you are reading this, then something has happened to me, and my girls are in need of help. I pray that the arrangements I made in St. Louis have brought you to them safe. There are things I should have told you in my letters, but some secrets are too dangerous to trust to the mail. Behind the locked door lies the true foundation of this ranch's prosperity, and the means to ensure my daughters never want for anything. But it is also dangerous knowledge, and I have hidden it away until someone I could trust completely could be here to guard it. The key you need is not made of metal. Look to where a father's love would hide his most precious treasure, in the place where only the smallest hands can reach." Eleanor read the letter 3 times, her mind racing. Where would a father hide something that only the smallest hands could reach? She looked around the cabin with new eyes, considering every hiding place a parent might use. It was little Catherine who provided the answer without knowing it. The 4-year-old was playing with her doll by the fireplace, reaching up inside the chimney to retrieve a ball that had rolled away. "Catherine, be careful," Eleanor called, but then she stopped. The chimney, a place only small hands could reach. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Eleanor lit a candle and knelt by the fireplace. The fire had died down to coals, and she could feel the cold air from the chimney above. Reaching up inside the flue, her fingers encountered something that didn't belong, a small wooden box wedged behind a protruding stone. Her heart pounding, she worked the box free and carried it to the table. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was an ornate brass key and another letter. "Eleanor," this letter began, and she was startled to see her name written in Thomas MacDonald's hand. "Yes, I know who you are. I didn't choose you at random from the marriage advertisements. Your father was Samuel Hartwell, wasn't he? The railroad surveyor who disappeared in Colorado 5 years ago. I knew your father. We worked together on something that powerful men killed him for, and nearly killed me. The room contains the proof of what we discovered, maps and documents that certain mining interests would murder to possess. But it also contains something else, a vein of silver that runs right through the back wall of this cabin. Your father died protecting this secret because he believed it should benefit working families, not robber barons. I've spent 5 years quietly extracting enough silver to secure my daughter's futures, but I always knew I couldn't do it alone forever. The girls don't know I couldn't risk their safety. But you, Eleanor, you have your father's surveying knowledge and his principles. You're the key I've been waiting for, not just to unlock the door, but to unlock the future I dreamed of for my children. Trust no one else with this secret. Use the silver to buy land, to secure the girls' educations, to build something lasting. But remember, men have killed for less than what lies behind that door." Eleanor's hands shook as she set down the letter. Her father, Samuel Hartwell, who had left for a surveying job in Colorado and never returned. The authorities had said it was an accident, a fall in the mountains. But if Thomas MacDonald was telling the truth? She looked at the brass key gleaming in the candlelight. Everything suddenly made sense. Why Thomas had chosen her specifically. Why he had seemed so confident in his letters that she would be the right person for his family. The next morning, Eleanor waited until the girls were busy with their chores before approaching the locked door. Her hand trembled as she inserted the key, and for a moment she hesitated. Opening this door would change everything, would make her responsible for secrets that had already cost her father his life. But then she thought of 6 pairs of blue eyes looking at her with desperate hope, of the long winter ahead, and the uncertain future these orphaned girls faced without help. She turned the key. The door swung open to reveal not one room but 2. The first was clearly Thomas MacDonald's private office.
shelves lined with books, a desk covered with maps and papers, and filing cabinets locked with smaller keys she found in the desk drawer. But it was the second room that took her breath away. The back wall had been carefully excavated to reveal a vein of silver ore that gleamed in the lamplight like captured starlight. Tools lay neatly arranged nearby, and several wooden crates contained what appeared to be refined silver. The amount represented a fortune enough to secure the girls' futures for generations, but it was the documents that truly staggered her. Maps showing mineral deposits throughout Montana Territory, marked in her father's familiar handwriting, correspondence between Samuel Hartwell and Thomas McDonald detailing their discoveries and their plans to ensure that local families, not distant corporations, would benefit from the wealth hidden in these mountains. And finally, a list of names, powerful men in mining and railroad companies who had conspired to steal the information and eliminate anyone who threatened their monopoly on Montana's mineral wealth. Eleanor sank into Thomas's chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd inherited. Not just wealth, but responsibility. Not just silver, but secrets that men had killed to protect. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Eleanor?" Sarah's voice called. "Is everything all right?" Eleanor quickly gathered the most sensitive documents and locked them in the desk drawer before opening the door. Sarah stood in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the revealed rooms. "Papa always said this was important," the girl whispered. "But I never imagined." "Sarah," Eleanor said carefully, "how much do you understand about keeping secrets?" The 14-year-old straightened her shoulders. "I've been keeping the secret of how scared I've been for 3 weeks, miss. I can keep bigger ones if I need to." Eleanor studied the young face and saw a maturity beyond her years, born of necessity and loss. "Then come in. You're old enough to understand what we're dealing with, and I'm going to need your help." Over the next hour, Eleanor explained everything carefully, gently, but honestly. Sarah listened with the grave attention of someone forced to grow up too quickly, asking intelligent questions and offering practical suggestions. "The other girls can't know everything yet," Sarah said finally. "But they need to know they're safe, that we're going to be all right." "More than all right," Eleanor assured her. "But Sarah, this secret has to stay between us for now. There are people who would hurt your family to get this information." That evening, Eleanor gathered all 6 girls around the fire. Little Catherine climbed into her lap without invitation, and Eleanor found herself thinking how natural it felt to have this child's trusting weight against her chest. "I want you all to understand something," she began. "I came here planning to marry your father and help him run this That can't happen now, but I'm not leaving you. This is my home now and you're my family." "Really?" Beth asked, hope shining in her eyes. "Really? Your father made arrangements to take care of you, and I'm going to see that his wishes are carried out. We're going to expand the ranch, maybe add some horses. You girls will go to school. We'll bring a teacher here if we have to. And when you're older, if you want to go to college or learn a trade, we'll make that happen too." "But how?" Mary asked practically. "We don't have money for all that." Eleanor smiled, thinking of the silver gleaming in the back room. "Your father was a very wise man who planned for your futures. Trust me, we're going to be just fine." Over the following weeks, Eleanor began the delicate process of converting their secret wealth into practical security. She made trips to town, claiming to be selling some of Thomas's tools and equipment to raise funds for winter supplies. In reality, she was carefully trading small amounts of silver through discreet channels, building relationships with merchants and bankers who asked no awkward questions. The ranch began to transform. Eleanor hired workers to cut and store hay for the cattle, to repair and winterize the buildings, and to establish the foundation for expanded operations in the spring. To any observer, it appeared that the new lady of the McDonald Ranch was simply a very capable manager, making the most of her late husband's legacy. The girls flourished under Eleanor's care. With their immediate survival secured, they began to show their true personality. Sarah revealed a keen mind for business, and a protective instinct toward her younger sisters. Mary showed artistic talent, sketching everything around her with remarkable skill. Anna had a gift with animals that promised to make her invaluable in expanding their livestock operation. Beth proved to be mechanically inclined, fascinated by how things worked, and eager to help with repairs around the ranch. Lucy was the scholar of the family, devouring every book Eleanor could acquire and asking questions that showed remarkable intellectual curiosity. And little Catherine was simply sunshine personified, bringing joy and laughter to their makeshift family. As winter deepened, Eleanor established new routine. Evenings were for lessons. She taught the girls advanced arithmetic, geography, and literature far beyond what they would have received in the local one-room schoolhouse. She also began teaching Sarah the basics of surveying and geology, skills that would prove invaluable in managing their secret resource. The locked room became Eleanor's private office, where she spent hours each night studying her father's maps and planning for the future. She corresponded with educators about bringing tutors to the ranch, with architects about expanding the house, and with lawyers about establishing trusts to protect the girls' inheritance. But she also corresponded with her father's former colleagues, the few who had survived the dangerous game of honest surveying in a territory controlled by corrupt mining interests. Slowly, carefully, she began to build a network of allies who shared Samuel Hartwell's vision of Montana's mineral wealth, benefiting its people rather than distant corporations. Spring came early to Montana Territory in 1888, and with it came new challenges. Word had somehow reached certain interested parties that the McDonald Ranch was prospering under new management. Eleanor began to notice strangers riding past the property, ostensibly traveling through but clearly taking note of their operations. It was Sarah who first spotted the danger. She had been helping Eleanor with the evening milking when she noticed a rider watching them from the hills above the ranch. "Miss Eleanor," she said quietly, "that man's been there for an hour. He's not just passing through." Eleanor followed the girl's gaze and felt a chill of recognition. The rider was too distant to make out clearly, but something about his posture reminded her of the men who had come asking questions about her father in the weeks before his disappearance. That night, Eleanor wrote carefully coded letters to her father's old network. If dangerous attention was turning toward the ranch, she needed allies who understood what they were really protecting. The response came faster than expected. A week later, a distinguished man in his 50s arrived at the ranch, introducing himself as Dr. Marcus Webb, a geological consultant. To any observer, he was simply a professional evaluating the ranch's potential for mineral exploration. In reality, he was one of Samuel Hartwell's closest friends and most trusted allies. "Your father was my partner in more than surveying," Webb explained during a private conversation in Eleanor's office. "We shared a vision of honest development that would benefit local communities. When he died, I feared that vision died with him." "It didn't," Eleanor assured him, "but we need to be smart about how we proceed. These girls are my priority now." Dr. Webb nodded approvingly. "Samuel would be proud. You've managed this situation with remarkable wisdom. But Eleanor, there are forces moving in this territory that you need to understand. The Copper Kings are expanding their operations, and they've heard rumors about significant silver deposits in this area." The Copper Kings, Eleanor had read about them in the territorial newspaper. Wealthy mining magnates, who had built empires through a combination of legitimate business and ruthless elimination of competition. "What do you recommend?" she asked. "Legitimacy," Dr. Webb replied. "File official mining claims on this property. Establish a legal corporation. Bring in partners who can provide protection through political connections. Make it more dangerous for them to move against you than to leave you alone." Over the following months, Eleanor followed Dr. Webb's advice. She established the Six Sisters Mining Company, named after the girls who had unknowingly inherited one of Montana's richest silver deposits. She brought in carefully chosen partners, men with connections to territorial politics and federal mining offices, men who shared her father's principles and could provide protection through legitimate channels. The girls gradually learned more about their circumstances, each revelation carefully timed to match their emotional readiness. By the time Catherine turned 5, she understood that they were wealthy and that Eleanor was not just their caretaker but their protector and the guardian of important family secrets. The ranch continued to expand. Eleanor hired a teacher, a young woman from Boston who was delighted to have 6 brilliant students and the resources to provide them with an exceptional education. She also hired guards, though they were presented to the world as ranch hands and mining consultants. As the months passed, Eleanor realized that she had found something she had never expected when she answered Thomas McDonald's advertisement for a wife. She had found her true calling as the guardian of these 6 remarkable young women, and the protector of a legacy that could change Montana territory forever. The locked door that had once hidden secrets now stood open, leading to an office where Eleanor planned the future with the same careful precision her father had once used to map them out. The key that had unlocked it had indeed been the key the girls were waiting for, not just to their inheritance, but to a future where they could be anything they dreamed of becoming. On a crisp autumn evening, exactly 1 year after her arrival, Eleanor sat on the front porch of the much-expanded ranch house, watching her 6 daughters, for that's how she had come to think of them, playing in the yard. Sarah was teaching the younger girls a song she had learned from their new music teacher. Mary was sketching the scene with the artistic supplies Eleanor had ordered from New York. Anna was training a new foal with the patience of a natural horsewoman. Beth was examining the mechanism of a new piece of mining equipment with the focused attention of a born engineer. Lucy was reading aloud from a book of poetry, her voice carrying clearly in the evening, and little Catherine was simply being 5 years old, chasing fireflies with the uninhibited joy that had become the soundtrack of their household. Eleanor smiled, thinking of the letter she had received that morning from Dr. Wood. The 6 Sisters Mining Company had been officially recognized by the territorial government, their claims registered and protected. More importantly, several of the men on Samuel Hartwell's old list of dangerous enemies had been arrested on federal charges related to mail fraud and conspiracy. The secret that had cost her father his life was finally safe, transformed from a deadly burden into a foundation for the future. The girls would never want for anything, not just material comfort, but education, opportunity, and the freedom to choose their own paths in life. As darkness fell and the fireflies began to dance in earnest, Eleanor called her daughters inside for their evening lessons. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new adventure. But tonight, in the warm glow of the lamp-lit kitchen, 6 sisters would learn about history and mathematics and literature, never knowing that they themselves were already making history, as the inheritors of one of Montana's greatest fortunes, and the guardians of one of its most important secrets. The mail-order bride who had arrived to find 6 girls and a locked door, had indeed become the key they were waiting for. The key to a future brighter than any of them had dared to dream.